Imagine standing in a forest so ancient, the air itself feels heavy with memory, and then watching as a silent, opaque wall of white begins to swallow the world tree by tree. This isn't a special effect. This is the daily reality in places like Costa Rica's Monteverde cloud forest or the mystical highlands of Peru, where fog doesn't just appear, it inhabits. But here's the shocking truth most visitors and even documentaries never tell you. This mesmerizing fog, often seen as a benign, beautiful blanket, is actually a ruthless engineer of life and death, critical lifeline for ecosystems that is now under severe threat from climate change, and its gradual disappearance is setting off a catastrophic chain reaction we're only just beginning to understand. Today, we're pulling back that veil of mist to reveal the brutal, beautiful, and absolutely essential role of fog in tropical forests and what its loss means for every single one of us, no matter where you live. If you think fog is just weather, you are dangerously mistaken. And by the end of this deep dive, you'll see these landscapes with entirely new eyes and understand the urgent race against time to save them. The science begins with understanding what this fog actually is. In tropical highland regions, it's more accurate to call it cloud sweep or horizontal precipitation. Unlike the radiation fog that forms over cool ground, this is essentially a cloud forced to earth by wind and topography. These forests are often situated on mountain slopes that intercept moisture-laden trade winds coming off the ocean. As the warm, wet air is forced upward, it cools, and the water vapor condenses into a cloud, which we then experience as fog at ground level. This isn't a passive weather event, it's an active hydrological pump. Data from studies in the Amazonian cloud forests shows that this fog can contribute anywhere from 30% to over 75% of the total annual hydrological input to the ecosystem, supplementing, and in some dry seasons, completely replacing rainfall. This water isn't just atmospheric moisture. It carries dissolved nutrients, including nitrogen, phosphorus, and critical minerals scavenged from the air and sea spray, acting as a direct fertilizer for the canopy. The trees themselves are engineered to harvest it. They've evolved a phenomenon called foliar uptake. Their leaves, often adorned with specialized structures like drip tips, grooved, and a coating of tiny hairs or scales, are not just passive surfaces. They actively channel the microscopic water droplets from the fog, which then coalesce and drip down to the soil, a process known as fog drip, or are absorbed directly through the leaf's cuticle and stomata. This is a literal drinking mechanism. Research using isotopic tracers has proven that trees in these forests can derive significant portion of their water budget directly from fog, not from their roots. This creates a bizarre and vital paradox. The ground can be relatively dry, while the canopy is a soaking wet oasis, supporting an entire universe of life that never touches the forest floor. The fog is the primary water source for epiphytes, the orchids, bromeliads, ferns, and mosses that coat every branch. These air plants have no roots in the soil. They rely entirely on atmospheric water and nutrients. In Monteverde, scientists have cataloged over 750 species of epiphytes in a single hectare, all dependent on that daily fog bath. The moisture also enables a mind-boggling level of biodiversity by creating microclimates. The constant humidity buffers temperature extremes, allowing species that would otherwise perish in heat or cold to thrive. It reduces evapotranspiration stress on plants, meaning they can keep their stomata open-lunged for photosynthesis without fear of drying out, leading to lusher, more productive growth. This isn't just about pretty scenery, it's about the fundamental architecture of a rainforest's productivity. The fog essentially decouples the forest's water supply from the unreliable rhythm of rainfall, providing a steady, reliable trickle that maintains the ecosystem's metabolic functions year-round. Without it, the entire intricate system, from the tallest emergent tree to the tiniest moss clinging to a twig, begins to desiccate and starve. And this brings us to the silent crisis. Climate change is not just about warming, it's about shifting atmospheric patterns. As global temperatures rise, the altitude at which clouds form the cloud base is being pushed higher. This is a well-documented phenomenon known as cloud base uplift. For every degree Celsius of warming, the cloud base can rise by approximately 100 meters. For a mountain whose peak is only a few hundred meters above that base, this is a death sentence. The forest is literally being lifted out of its life support system. The fog is becoming less frequent, less dense, and shorter in duration. In places like Montverde, long-term datasets show a clear decline in misty days, correlating with observed stress on amphibian populations, bird migrations, and plant communities. The golden toad, a symbol of this region, is now extinct. And while multiple factors were at play, the desiccation of its fog-dependent microhabitat was a primary driver. The loss of fog input means the soil moisture reservoir isn't replenished, streams dry up, and the forest becomes more susceptible to fire, a previously almost unheard of threat in these perpetually damp environments. We are witnessing the biome shift in real time, from a vibrant, dripping cloud forest to a drier, more seasonal, and far less diverse woodland. This isn't a future prediction. It's a current observation, backed by decades of painstaking meteorological and ecological data from sites across the tropics. The fog is retreating, and as it goes, it's pulling the plug on one of the planet's most magical and vital ecosystems. The cascading effects of vanishing fog extend far beyond thirsty plants. They trigger a total rewrite of the forest's social and chemical networks, dismantling relationships that have evolved over millennia. Let's start with the fauna. Every animal in this ecosystem, from the resplendent quetzal to the tiny tree frog, has a life cycle intricately timed to the fog's rhythm. For amphibians whose permeable skin makes them environmental canaries, the constant humidity is non-negotiable. It allows them to venture out of their hideaways to feed and breed without the fatal risk of desiccation. The moisture maintains the delicate micropools in bromeliad leaves, known as phytotelmas, which serve as nurseries for frog and insect larvae. As these miniature ponds dry up, entire generations are wiped out. For birds, the fog influences food availability. Many tropical birds rely on nectar, fruits, and insects whose abundance is directly tied to the water supply. The iconic quetzal, for instance, follows the fruiting patterns of specific trees in the cloud forest. If those trees are water-stressed and produce less fruit, the quetzal's migration and breeding success plummet. But the most profound impact might be on the unseen majority, the insects and the microbial world. The fog's chemical composition is a cocktail of life. As it condenses on leaves, it doesn't just deliver water. It delivers a soup of dissolved organic compounds, airborne bacteria and fungi, and essential nutrients like nitrogen. This aerial compost fuels a complex food web on the leaf surface itself, a realm called the phyllosphere. Billions of bacteria and fungi alive here, many of which are beneficial endophytes that live inside the plant tissue, helping to fix nitrogen, deter pathogens, and increase drought tolerance. The consistent moisture from fog maintains this microbial garden. When the fog falters, the phyllosphere dries out, shifting the microbial community from one dominated by beneficial, moisture-loving bacteria to one dominated by stress-tolerant fungi, some of which can be pathogenic. The plant's first line of immune defense is compromised. Furthermore, fog plays a crucial role in plant-to-plant communication. In a humid environment, volatile organic compounds, VOCs, chemical signals released by plants under attack from herbivores travel more effectively. These signals warn neighboring plants to ramp up their own chemical defenses. A drier, less foggy atmosphere disrupts this wood-wide web of chemical chatter, leaving the entire forest more vulnerable to pest outbreaks. The hydrological disruption also rewires the nutrient cycle. Normally, fog drip slowly leaches nutrients from the canopy litter down into the soil. This gentle, constant fertilization builds up rich, sponge-like soils. Without it, the nutrient transfer becomes more pulsed and chaotic, dependent solely on heavy rain events which are more likely to cause erosion, washing away the topsoil rather than enriching it. The forest soil becomes poorer, less able to retain what little water does arrive. This leads to a vicious cycle of degradation. Trees under water and nutrient stress become more susceptible to disease and infestations like bark beetles. They also allocate less energy to producing flowers, fruits, and seeds, reducing food for the entire animal community. The fog, therefore, is the great stabilizer and connector. It is the medium through which water, nutrients, and information flow. Its removal doesn't just create a water deficit, it severs the lines of communication and supply, isolating organisms and collapsing the cooperative networks that give the cloud forest its resilience. We are seeing the transition from a complex, interconnected society of species to a collection of struggling individuals, a breakdown in the very social fabric of the forest. This has direct consequences for human populations downstream too. These cloud forests are often water towers, the source of rivers and aquifers for millions of people. The fog drip is a major contributor to base flow in these rivers, ensuring they run clear and steady even in the dry season. As the fog input declines, river flows become more erratic, flooding violently in the rains and drying to a trickle, otherwise impacting agriculture, drinking water, and hydroelectric power for entire regions. The loss of fog is not an ecological niche story. It is a story of fundamental systemic failure with stark human costs. Now, you might be thinking, this is tragic, but it's a remote problem happening in faraway mountains. That is where the second shocking hook comes in. The fog that rolls through these tropical forests is part of a global atmospheric river, and its disruption is a flashing red signal for our planet's climate system as a whole. These cloud forests are not just victims of climate change. They are active, critical regulators of the global climate, and their degradation accelerates the very processes that are killing them. This is a devastating feedback loop. Here's how it works. Tropical forests, including cloud forests, are colossal carbon sinks. They absorb more carbon dioxide from the atmosphere than they release, locking it away in their biomass and soils. A healthy, fog-maintained cloud forest is incredibly dense and lush, meaning its carbon storage capacity is immense. Peruvian cloud forests, for example, have been found to store as much or more carbon per hectare as lowland Amazon rainforest. But a water-stressed forest stops growing. It becomes a carbon source, not a sink. Trees that die and decompose release their stored carbon back into the atmosphere. Furthermore, dry, stressed forests are infinitely more prone to fire. While tropical cloud forests were once virtually fireproof, today, firefighters in Costa Rica and Colombia are battling blazes in these previously immune ecosystems. A single fire can release decades of sequestered carbon in a matter of days. This creates a positive feedback loop. Climate change reduces fog, which dries the forest, which releases carbon, which worsens climate change, which pushes the cloud base even higher. But the impact goes beyond carbon. Forests, especially humid ones, are massive engines of cloud formation themselves. Through transpiration, they release vast quantities of water vapor into the air process, so powerful it creates flying rivers that transport moisture across continents. The Amazon, for instance, releases about 20 billion tons of water vapor per day. This moisture fuels rainfall as far away as the Argentine Pampas and the Andes. A dying, dried-out cloud forest contributes less to this aerial river, potentially disrupting rainfall patterns thousands of miles away. Your local drought or unusual storm pattern could, in part, be traced back to the desiccation of a fog forest on another continent. The fog itself also has a direct cooling effect both locally and globally. By reflecting sunlight, high albedo effect, and providing shade and evaporation cooling, fog forests help regulate regional temperatures. Their loss turns a cool, moist region into a warmer, drier one, contributing to local warming hotspots. There's also a profound loss of biological capital with global implications. Cloud forests are arcs of genetic diversity and pharmacies of undiscovered compounds. Over 25% of our modern pharmaceuticals derive from rainforest plants, and the unique adaptations of fog-dependent species to moisture stress, to UV radiation at high altitudes, to fungal pathogens could hold the key to future medicines, drought-resistant crops, or industrial enzymes. The cure for a disease, the genetic trait that could save a staple food from climate change, might be encoded in a moss or a fungus that lives only on the branches of a specific tree in a specific fog zone. Every time a hectare of cloud forest degrades, we are burning a library of life solutions before we've even read the titles of the books. This makes the crisis a global security issue for food security, water security, and health security. Ignoring it because it seems distant is like ignoring a crack in the foundation of your house because it's in the basement. The entire structure is connected. The data is unequivocal. Satellite imagery, ground-based climate stations, and species population studies all tell the same story of retreat and stress. This isn't speculation, it's a measured, ongoing collapse, and this realization forces a monumental shift in perspective. Saving fog forests isn't about preserving pretty postcards for eco-tourists. It's about safeguarding a vital organ in the planetary system, one that stabilizes climate, cycles water, and holds irreplaceable genetic wisdom. Their fate is inextricably linked to ours, a truth that makes their preservation one of the most pragmatic forms of self-interest for humanity. Faced with this daunting picture, despair is a natural reaction, but it is not a useful one. The final and perhaps most important part of the story is that we are not powerless. A global movement of scientists, local communities, conservationists, and even technologists is fighting back with ingenious, multi-pronged strategies to buy these forests time and help them adapt. This is where the narrative shifts from obituary to action plan. The first and most critical line of defense is the absolute protection and expansion of existing cloud forest reserves. This means not just policing against logging, but creating biological corridors that connect isolated forest patches, allowing species to migrate upslope as the climate warms. In Costa Rica, the iconic Montverde Cloud Forest Reserve is part of a larger connected corridor initiative that links reserves all the way down to the Pacific coast. This biological bridge gives animals and plants a pathway to move to cooler, more suitable elevation. But protection alone is no longer enough. We must assist natural regeneration and reforestation, but with a smart, science-led approach. It's not just about planting any tree, it's about planting the right trees. Native fog-dependent species that are genetically resilient and have high foliar uptake efficiency are being identified and cultivated in nurseries. In the Andes, projects are using fog catcher trees like the Altus acuminate, Andean alder, which are hardy, fast-growing, and excellent at modifying the microclimate to make it more hospitable for other, more sensitive cloud forest species to fog. The most fascinating frontier is assisted migration, the controversial but increasingly necessary practice of manually transplanting species or their genetic stock to higher elevations before their current habitat becomes uninhabitable. This is a complex ethical and ecological decision. But for species trapped on mountain tops with nowhere left to go, it may be their only hope. parallel to biological strategies are astonishing technological interventions. Inspired by ancient practices, modern fog harvesting is being deployed not for human water supply, but for ecological restoration. Giant, vertical mesh nets are erected in deforested or degraded highland areas. As fog blows through, droplets collect on the mesh and drip into irrigation systems that water newly planted saplings. This artificial fog drip can provide the critical moisture needed for a young forest to establish itself, effectively jump-starting the ecosystem's recovery until it can become self-sustaining. In Peru and Chile, NGOs are experimenting with this at the landscape scale. Data from pilot projects shows significantly higher survival rates for seedlings watered by fog harvesters compared to those relying on rainfall alone. On a more micro scale, hydrogel polymers, water-absorbing crystals, are being used at the root balls of saplings to provide a slow-release water reservoir during dry spells. Furthermore, drones are being deployed for precision seeding in hard-to-reach areas and for monitoring forest health through multispectral imaging, allowing conservationists to identify stressed trees before they visibly decline. But technology is just a tool. The most sustainable solutions are those that align conservation with human well-being. This means working with, not against, local communities. Successful models involve payments for ecosystem services, PES, where downstream water users like cities or hydroelectric companies pay upstream forest communities to protect and restore the cloud forests that guarantee their water supply. It also involves promoting sustainable, fog forest-friendly livelihoods like shade-grown coffee and cocoa agroforestry, beekeeping for rare forest honey, and ecotourism that values a living forest more than a cleared pasture. Education is the bedrock. When local children grow up understanding that the fog on their mountains is the source of their water, their clean air, and their future prosperity, they become the most passionate guardians. Citizen science projects that involve communities in monitoring frog populations, measuring fog density, or tagging trees create a powerful sense of ownership and generate invaluable local data. The fight is also happening in labs and seed banks, where the genetic diversity of fog forest species is being cryogenically preserved, a literal backup of biodiversity for an uncertain future. This multi-front war, from corridors to cloud seeding nets, from drone patrols to economic incentives, represents our best hope. It proves that while the challenge is monumental, human ingenuity, when coupled with a profound respect for nature, can craft solutions. We are not merely witnesses to an ending, we can be authors of a new chapter of resilience and adaptation. So, where does this leave us? And more importantly, where does it leave you watching this right now? The story of the fog of the forest is a microcosm of our relationship with the entire planet, a story of intricate connection, profound consequence, ultimately of choice. We have journeyed from the silent, beautiful moment of fog engulfing a tree to the global climate feedback loops it stabilizes, and finally to the human hands working to mend what's broken. This narrative was never just about weather in a far-off place. It was a blueprint for understanding how the world works and how we must operate within it. The evidence is no longer hidden in the mist. It is clear, data-driven, and urgent. We now know that the fate of a golden toad in Montverde is linked to the security of water in a distant city, that the genetic code in a bromeliad could one day safeguard our food supply, and that the carbon locked in a mossy branch is a tiny but critical part of stabilizing our shared atmosphere. This knowledge dissolves the illusion of separation. You are connected to that forest, whether you feel it or not, through the water cycle, the carbon cycle, and the economic and biological networks that sustain modern life. Therefore, salvation is not a charitable act. It is an act of systemic maintenance for our only home. And this is where your power comes in. This cannot be a task left only to scientists in the field. It requires a global constituency of the informed and the engaged. That means you. Your attention, your voice, and your choices are tools of immense power. Start by making this story visible. Share this video. Talk about cloud forests, fog drip, and climate feedback loops at your dinner table. Break the silence around these complex but critical ecosystems. When people understand why something matters, they are moved to protect it. Use your consumer power. Support brands and companies that are committed to deforestation-free supply chains, particularly for commodities like coffee, cocoa, beef, and palm oil that drive frontier forest loss. Choose shade-grown coffee, which preserves forest canopy structure and provides habitat. When you travel, seek out genuine ecotourism operators who put conservation and community benefit at their core, proving that a living forest is more valuable than a cut one. Become a citizen advocate. Support, whether through donations or amplification, the NGOs on the front lines, organizations like the Monteverde Conservation League, the World Land Trust, or local groups in the Andes and Southeast Asia who are buying land, planting native trees, and deploying fog harvesters. Put pressure on your political representatives to support strong international agreements on climate change and forest protection, and to fund global conservation initiatives. Climate change is the overarching threat, so every action you take to reduce your carbon footprint and advocate for a swift transition to renewable energy is an action that helps slow the rise of that cloud base. Finally, cultivate a sense of informed wonder. The world is not a collection of resources to be used, but a network of relationships to be understood and respected. Let the image of the fog in the forest remind you of that profound interconnection. Our time to act is not unlimited. The fog is lifting, and the window to secure these ecosystems is closing. But it is still open. The projects we highlighted prove that directed, intelligent action works. We have the knowledge, we are developing the tools, and now we need the collective will. This is the ultimate call to action. Do not let this story end with the credits of this video. Let it be the beginning of your own engagement. Be the person who connects the dots. Be the voice for the forests that have no voice. Be the pressure that demands change and the support that enables solutions. The next chapter of the fog forest story hasn't been written yet. Will it be a finale of loss or a testament to human resilience and wisdom? That decision isn't just being made in remote research stations or government halls. It's being made by you right now in what you choose to do next. Subscribe to this channel for more deep dives into the hidden forces shaping our world. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a chance to understand and act. But more importantly, start the conversation. Share this. Talk about it. Choose differently. The forest and our shared future is waiting.